Alright, well, having a little interesting technical difficulties with my blue screen tonight, because even though this looks kind of brown, it is in fact green, and using the green side would not have yielded with the results we had hoped for, or we would like. So we will do the best we can. Welcome to Full Circle. I'm Chad, your host, Cheddar Caveman on everything that is social media and whatnot. So feel free to send me a message on any of those, should you like. For the first time in a little while, I don't really have any news or announcements to discuss. We, of course, are still anticipating the Theme Force, a single Theme Force being released any day now. I'd say this week, next week, possibly a little farther, but probably within next couple weeks. And obviously the Scorn release is still pending as well. We probably won't go too deep on that because our podcast is called Full Circle, not Full Scorn, but nonetheless. So we'll talk about those when they come out, but for now I put some questions out in the Circle Facebook group, or I put a post out in the Circle Facebook group asking if anybody had any questions or topics or whatnot. And the one I had two, basically I had two requests. One was for Wolds, and I would like it, I went and looked through my list of like what I've covered, and I've covered quite a few of them. I think what's remaining still is Megalith and the Woldweird. And the Woldweirds just received some changes. I'm kind of trying them out, so I'm going to talk about them, but not today. And the other request I got was for the Tharn, and I guess the poster didn't really specify. Excuse me, get a drink real quick. But the poster didn't really specify, but I believe what they were getting at was the male Tharn. So what we're going to do is I haven't actually played a ton of games with them, so you can use that to mean sort of inform anything you'd like. But I do have some thoughts on them. We can certainly go through them. And, you know, as I get a chance to get a little bit more play with them at some point, we'll, you know, if findings are different than some of my ideas and thoughts behind them, we will revisit. So, I do think I have one picture of a Tharn. Yeah, that guy. We'll leave him up there for a while. I like him. So, but I'm going to start by talking about the Tharn-Ravagers unit. So, the model you see, there's actually the command attachment for the unit. So, the Tharn-Ravagers are, of course, a circle unit. They're a Tharn unit, no surprise there. Consisting of either 4 or 6 members. They are Speed 6, Strength 8, Mat 7, Rat 5, which doesn't matter. Def 13, Armor 15, Command 7. They have Pathfinder and are tough. They wield a Tharn Axe, which is range 2, Power and Strength 13. They have 5 wounds, and as I mentioned, there are 4 or 6 models in the unit for 11 or 16 points respectively. On the back of their card, they have 2 rules. They have Heart Eater, which I'm going to read the full text because it's on all of the Tharn we're going to talk about. When this model destroys a living or undead enemy model with a melee attack, it gains the destroyed model's corpse token. This model can have up to 3 corpse tokens at any time. During its activation, this model can spend corpse tokens to make additional melee attacks or boost melee attack. Can spend corpse tokens to make additional melee attacks or to boost melee attack or melee damage rolls. It can make 1 additional attack or boost 1 roll for each token spent. And then they have Tree Walker, which is that this model ignores forests when determining line of sight. While completely within a forest, this model gains +2 defense against melee attack rolls. And so let's just talk about the base unit, and then I'll read to you the command attachment here in a moment. But things of note, first of all, if you played in Mark II, things that have changed of note are they don't have powerful charge anymore. They gained a point of armor, but they lost 3 wounds, and they gained tough. As well as Tree Walker used to not have completely within So that obviously was a small tweak as well. And there we go. A little artifact thing there. We'll just cover it up with the picture of the Tharn guy. So those are the things that have changed. Point cost is obviously a little bit adjusted. Oh, field allowance is still 2. Apologies for not mentioning that sooner. So sort of one thing of note, defense 13 is obviously pretty good, and if you can provide a force for them to completely hide in, defense 15 against melee is extraordinarily strong. We don't really have any ways to boost defense reliably beyond that. For melee attacks, anyways, we have a few ways to boost it against ranged attacks. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything when I say that, but I don't think I am. So that's obviously a big deal. They also, I mean, the weird sort of flight type ruling with, actually, sorry, Tree Walker no longer does that. So in Mark II, Tree Walker used to allow models with it to move through one another, and this no longer does that. So that's another change. I actually had read that too quickly originally and thought that it still contained that part. So ignoring line of sight for forests is super strong though. Forests are probably the most restrictive or most defensive piece of terrain in the game right now because of the number of things that don't ignore them. So Tree Walker, Tracker, and anything that says ignores line of sight are the only things that actually do ignore forests in this edition. So that makes that rule pretty strong, and I think that's at least part of what you want to be looking at when looking at this unit. Power Strength 13 is good. It is the hardest hitting melee number we have on a non-War Beast or Warcaster in our faction, or Battle Engine, I guess. So that's worth note. 13 isn't like overly strong. Obviously, you know, in Crix you can get a unit of effectively POW 13 Weapon Master guys. Doom Reavers are POW 13, or I think they may be POW 12 now. 12 or 13 Weapon Master, things like that. So they hit hard for us. I wouldn't necessarily say that means they hit abundantly hard. POW 13 is nothing to scoff at, but it's also not really, you're not breaking the top echelons of armor with this either. So just something to keep in mind there. We'll go ahead and talk about their command attachment, because I think, honestly, I don't see you really playing this unit without it. So it shares most of the same stat line. However, it is 5 points. It is also field allowance 2, so anytime you bring a unit, you can bring the attachment. It is still speed 6. It is strength 8, which is the same. It is mat 8, so that's 1 better. Still defense 13, armor 15, still Pathfinder. It is command 9, so that's going to give you an extra 2 inches for your unit. Same weapon, 8 wounds instead of 5. And he is going to give, and he has Heart Eater and Tree Walker as well. He's going to give 2 different rules to the unit. First of all, he grants them Vengeance. So if you don't know, Vengeance is while this model is in formation, models in the unit, or yes, while this model is in formation, although I don't think it can be out of formation. Models in the unit gain Vengeance during your maintenance phase. If one or more models in the unit with Vengeance were damaged, that's an important note, by enemy attacks during the last round, each model in the unit can advance 3 inches and make 1 basic melee attack. Big change to Vengeance is on damage, not on destroyed, so worth note. And he also has a rule called Mass Carnage, which is that this model can use Mass Carnage once per game, so it's a mini feat, at any time during this unit's activation. This activation, models in this unit gain Overtake. And Overtake states when a model with Overtake destroys 1 or more enemy models with a basic melee attack during its combat action. After the attack result, it can immediately advance up to 1 inch. So a couple things of note. Both rules are good. Mass Carnage is going to allow you to use these models to kind of carve a swath through infantry. At mat 7 and 8, they're pretty accurate, not overly so. Obviously, 7's toward the top of the curve, though. And with Heart Eater, if you're attacking anything but like construct units in Scorn and I suppose Circle a little bit, and mostly Convergence, then you're going to get a Heart token, which you can use to buy another attack. So kill a model, move an inch, buy an attack, kill a model, move an inch, etc., etc., etc. You kind of see where this is going. There's no really easy way to get additional corpse tokens on the models in advance, though, so you'll never have more than one. You'll never reliably have more than one on any given model at any given time, at least at this time. But it does let you essentially have like pseudo berserk, which is good. So if there's a lot of infantry, you're going to get use out of mass carnage, I would say. You may be able to use it to dig deeper, but I don't think against anything but infantry that's going to be terribly reliable for obvious reasons. Vengeance is probably the biggest deal here, and it's the biggest deal because 3 inches of movement is significant, and the fact that it only has to be damaged now is very strong. Added with the fact that they have tough, so now they don't even necessarily have to be killed for things that happen like that, and then you're going to get more movement. You may get the attack. The attack is really the least big deal. It's really much more about the movement, in my opinion. So this unit threatens 11 inches on a charge right now. If it gets a vengeance move, it threatens 14, and that's significant. They don't hit as hard as, like I said, they could certainly hit harder if we wanted to use them to take out heavies more reliably and things like that. But vengeance is going to be important. So I'm sure the person who posted asking about this, it posted because they were like, nobody's really playing these, and I want to see, like, is that valid? Is that invalid? And my answer is, I don't know. We'll talk about the solos that kind of accompany them, and if we have time, we'll talk about the Bloodpack as well, since they're sort of in a similar position. But 13-15 is still not, and 5 wounds is still not a spectacular stat line, and you're kind of looking at a minimum of 21 points to field this unit, and then reasonably you may be looking at the other 2 solos, which are also, we'll talk about them, but they're 5 points also. So 31 points of stuff needs to get at least 31 points worth of work done. One kind of downer is this guy, the chief. He grants vengeance, which if you talk to, anybody who played anyone who played Retribution in Mark II, and the the Dawnguard Sentinels had granted vengeance on their unit attachment, and they complained a ton about it because that guy would just get, and he's probably easier to kill than the chief, but he would get sniped out, and then you're like, great, I don't have vengeance anymore. Like, that was kind of a garbage rule. And we have the possibility that could happen here too. Tough will mitigate that a little bit. Like I said, he's a little more survivable at 13-15 with 8 wounds than that model, which, although it is close because he was 12-17, I think, and he had 5 wounds, so it's actually very close. And he was a small base. But I think if you're going to get work out of this unit, you need to position this guy extremely safely so that you can get your vengeance moves. You're going to want to... you're probably going to want those solos, or at least one of them, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. But you're going to need to find ways to make them do work. And sort of what has kept me from playing them is I haven't really found a role for them in any lists I'm playing, because they used to have brutal charge, which took their charge attacks up to power 15. And once you get up to power strength 15, we're talking about attacks that will damage a heavy pretty reliably. If you think about it, we send in Scarsfield's Griffins with Primal and with Scything Touch, and they're only they're maxing out at 16, which is, granted, they're obviously less points, but he's also less models. We also are talking about a frenzy potential there. We're talking about one model that has to be killed, etc. So with the Ravagers, I do think that they're there might be something there. The Power 13, a lot of people in the community have said like it doesn't hit enough, and that's sort of been how I felt as well. But maybe I might be mistaken on that. So if you do the math on the rest of the units we have in our faction, at least, we have blood trackers, so they cap out at Power 11, effectively against their prey target, and they're going to get 3 dice no matter how you swing it. So they're farther range. Stealth on a single wound infantry unit is generally going to be a little bit more survivable in my opinion, and you're going to get more models and more attacks out of that unit, and they're going to cost you 16 to 20 points if you add Duello. I don't think we've talked about them. We'll add them to another episode down the road. So, but they top out at 11 with 3 dice, no matter how you look at it. Wolves Roboros are going to be at 9 Weapon Master on 1 turn. They can CMA, so for 15 points, which is close here, if they CMA up to 11, POW 11 Weapon Masters, they should do more damage, but that's 1 turn on significantly less survivable models. And yeah, I know people are going to be like, well, it's not that survivable. 13-15 tough with wounds is more survivable than 13-13 no wounds. So the Wolves are getting close, but only on 1 turn. So that's worth note. We have the Skinwalkers, so they can get up to 14 with Gang, so they will hit harder here. However, they are much slower at speed 5. They don't have Pathfinder unless they charge, and they don't have Vengeance, and they don't have any possibility of multiple attacks. So comparable there. They're much, much more survivable is the one thing I would say about them. So it sort of depends, obviously, and there's a few other places we can look at attacks, right? Bloodweavers are POW 9 with Gang, POW 11. So they're still less, although Mat 8 is slightly more accurate, of course. And the Tharn Wolf Riders are POW 9 Weapon Masters, both on the charge and on the throw. Effectively is going to be about effective POW 12.5 on the charge then. But for 18 points, you're getting 1 less model. So I would say they're sort of comparable, but they're faster, and there's other stuff with them to consider. So to a degree, POW 13 is still the hardest hitting melee charge we have in the faction at the range that they're able to do so, which, like I said, is about 14 inches, which is actually, if you trigger Vengeance, is 1 inch farther than you're getting a charge from Wolf Riders, but they obviously bring a few other things to the table. Yeah, I said Tharn Wolf Rider. And maybe that is actually significant enough. We do have access to a healthy number of debuffs with things like Sighting Touch from Tanith. We have Curse of Shadows on 2 casters. Balder slowing them down sort of defeats part of the purpose, but he does have Stone Skin, which would take them up to Power Strength 15 and Armor 17, while trading a point for a point of defense downward, and speed. Might be something there too. I haven't really thought about it much. So that's sort of where you have to do it, but you still are going to need to get 21 to 31 points of work out of this unit, and I feel like in today's environment, as it is, and with so few infantry buffs, that I feel like they sort of had their role mistaken maybe in the shuffle, or the role that I sort of see for them is not the role perhaps that Privateer Press sees for them. They're certainly capable of taking out like almost all light warjacks and light warbeasts in the game. They certainly can take out most other heavy infantry, and they'll probably get the alpha on them. They probably take out things like battle engines. Most of them are not that tanky at the end of the day. They're usually around the same tankiness of a light, in my opinion. Pardon me. But they're not getting to the point where they can take out a heavy. And without powerful charge, they're probably a little bit shy of being able to take out something like a Warcaster. So with that in mind, that's kind of where I've lost them in the shuffle. 13-15, as I mentioned, is not the most survivable by any means. I think the stealth on some of the female Tharn is better, and on some of our beasts is better. things like that. And obviously more models are harder to hide behind, like something like a cloud, clouds from our druids or our druid mistriders, or the couple forests the Century Stone will provide. So that also is tough. Someone like Wormwood can do a lot to protect them. Obviously the feat giving them +2 defense is pretty strong. I use that to great advantage in Mark 2. Cursed Shadows is strong with them as well. So that might be a place where I would actually see them having some value. I have not tested it. I think I did read a couple early battle reports where people played it and they felt like they did get the work out of the Ravagers that they wanted. But I personally haven't tested it, so I couldn't tell you if that is a fluke, or if that person's particularly good with it, or what exactly. And another thing, we just don't really have, as far as casters that support them, and maybe the 15 armor is a little better than I'm giving it credit for. We do have a few +2 armor buffs. Chromac 1, Morvana 1, I mentioned Stoneskin from Balder, and am I missing somebody? Balder 2, of course, is feet. You're not going to get enough Roots of the Earth out to protect all of them. But you're not. I don't think that exemplifying their armor stat is really the best, because if I wanted something that was going to be more survivable, and when we talk about them, the Skinwalkers are probably going to provide me with that more likely. Their native armor is 12. They have more wounds, and they have unyielding, so they're armor 20 once they get stuck in. And I feel like if I'm looking for a defensive unit, that's a little bit more where I'm reaching for. So with the Ravagers, I feel like what I want is a more offensive unit, right? So if you look at Scorn, for example, they have the Aquari and the Satrati, and the Satrati are kind of, they both hit hard, right? The Satrati hit just a little less hard and have no other additional attacks. The Aquari have their drag attack, but they have Shield Wall as an option, so they'll do a little bit of work, and they'll be armor 21 with Shield Wall, I believe it is. But then the Aquari, they're sort of the offensive side, and so when I look at them, I kind of want to get the offensive side, and I have not been convinced that Power 13 is enough offense, and that's why I haven't been really playing them. I think I would like to find some time to play them. I kind of mentioned the casters I would probably play them with as somebody that's bringing additional buff or debuff, or I would probably look at them with something like Hutchuck in the list, so at least I have the Rust Bomb for dealing with Warjacks. But let's go on. I'm just going to leave this guy up here because he's a cool looking Tharn, and he's covering up some silliness that's going on my green screen. But there are now two. One of them used to be an attachment, actually. There are 2 solos that go with this unit. And the first one we'll talk about is the Tharn Ravager Whitemane. So he's a 5-point solo. He is his stat line is remarkably similar to the Chieftain we just talked about, but he's speed 6, strength 8, mat 8. So again, mat 8, defense 13, armor 15, and he's command 8. So almost the same, except the command is off by 1. Same Tharn axe, 8 wounds, 5 points, and field allowance 2. Like the other models, he also has Heart Eater and Tree Walker. He has critical grievous wounds on his axe, so it's just a little something. I wouldn't call that a big deal. And then he natively has Overtake, so when he destroys a model with a basic melee attack, he can advance 1 inch. So again, he can Pac-Man on his own. And he also has True Walker, and he has Veteran Leader Tharn Ravagers. So while in this model's command range, other friendly Tharn Ravager models gain +1 to attack rolls. So before I was sort of saying that Mat 7 was good, not amazing, but very good. Mat 8 is in the very good, pushing, like, you don't get much better than Mat 8 in the game. There's only a couple things that even come close. I don't know of any infantry unit that is native Mat 8, so this takes you up to an effective Mat 8. Quick ruling of note, it does say other, so he doesn't benefit from himself, but if you do have 2 Tharn Ravager Whitemanes, they will both provide +1 to each other, so they can go up to Mat 9, making them very phenomenal. Obviously, positioning to stay in his command of 8 can be a little tricky. Talking about medium bases, talking about trying to keep them safe. Their armor value is not so high that you want that you're like immune to blast damage or anything like that. So the Tharn Ravager Whitemane is definitely something I think you need to look at what role, if you're going to play the Ravagers, what role they're going to play. I think he's very important if you think you're going to use them to go up against softer heavies, which are the ones that are a little more likely to damage. And by softer, I mean generally the things that Circle is going to bring you, like Circle, Crix, Legion, Signar to a lesser extent, are going to bring you to the table. But they all have a little bit higher defense, so the mat buff is going to be helpful. If you're going up against infantry with these guys, the mat buff is going to be very helpful, as a lot of infantry is defense 12 to 14. It's overkill for the 12, but for the 14, you're now really helping your odds out quite a bit. And of course, you could just bring it on its own and use it as a deterrent for single wound infantry. You can send one in and sort of just Pac-Man your way through with 2-inch reach. If they just don't position well, you're going to get quite a few kills. But again, it depends on how much infantry you tend to see or tend to need to plan for with your list. So I don't really have a ton to say about him. I have not played him as well. And it seems to me like he's the last piece of this puzzle, and you'll see why when I talk about the Shaman, that I would put in the list. I think if I have the 31 points and I'm like, this is just too many points in one basket and I needed to cut back to the 26, he would be the model I'd be more likely to let go. So good combat solo on his own. Veteran leader is a strong ability. I think, if you have enough Tharn to benefit from it, that rule on its own is going to be enough. And having a Mat 8 POW 13 at the end of your, later on in the game certainly isn't going to be a bad thing. But at 5 points, you're sort of debating a little bit. The other solo is the Tharn Ravager Shaman. And this guy, a little bit different. He is speed 6, strength 8, mat 7, rat 6. He doesn't have a gun though either. Defense 13, armor 15, command 6. I do wish that number was bigger, but it is important. Pathfinder, tough. 5 wounds, 5 points, and field allowance 2. So 5 instead of 8. But the back of his card, and he has one difference. His melee weapon is range 2 still, but it's only power and strength 12. However, it is magical. Does have magical damage. The back of his card is where he gets really interesting, though. So he still has Heart Eater. He still has True Walker. But he also has Battle Wizard, which, if you don't know, is once per turn when the model destroys one or more enemy models with a melee attack during its activation, immediately after the attack is resolved, make a magic ability special attack or special action. He has a magic ability of 6 and 3 different abilities. So one is Chain Lightning, which is a range 10 magic attack. Model hit by Chain Lightning suffers a POW 10 electrical damage roll, and lightning arcs from that model to D3 consecutive additional models. Lightning arcs to the nearest model that is not already arc 2 within 4 inches of the last model of arc 2, ignoring this model, so this model being the Shaman. Each model the lightning arcs to suffers a POW 10 electrical damage roll. Lightning arc damage rolls are not considered to have been caused by an attack. Chain lightning damage rolls are simultaneous. He also has Hunter's Grace, which is friendly Tharn models cannot become knocked down while in this model's command range, which lasts for 1 round. And he has Sigil of Power. Range command, target friendly model unit. If the unit is in range, its weapons gain damage type magical. It lasts for 1 turn. So for 5 points, this guy gets real interesting. And of the things we listed, I have actually played this, and it is the piece that I'm the most happy with, really, of these male Tharn. Mat 7 is good, as we've mentioned. Being able to kill something and get a Battle Wizard off is very strong. So in certain lists, you're going to be able to kill 1 or more models using the sort of like attack and buy attacks with the corpses, and then you're going to be able to zot out a Chain Lightning. So on his own, this guy, depending on how models are clumped up, he might be able to kill 1 to 3 models in melee, and then an additional 1 to 4 models with this Chain Lightning. So that's very, very strong. The thing that really makes him good with the rest of the Tharn is they all have tough now, the male Tharn. And this guy has this rule, Hunter's Grace, which says friendly Tharn, and this is important, so it doesn't just synergize with the male Tharn, but also it does synergize with the female Tharn and any other Tharn models, one of note being Chromac, and says they can't be knocked down. That is a non-purifiable way of preventing knockdown, which is extremely strong and very, very rare. You could have a whole... Command 6 limits this to a degree, but you could have a lot of Tharn in your list that somebody's planning to knock down to make their defense 13 or 15 if you're in a forest reliable to hit, and that ain't happening. They can be causing tough checks too. So now tough we know turns off when you're knocked down. They can't be knocked down. They keep getting to make tough rolls. It can be frustrating for your opponent. Hopefully beneficial to you. So those are just a couple things. The big one for Hunter's Grace, and this is the reason I've actually played him, is not being able to knock down either of our Chromax is very, very strong as well. He's pretty survivable, but a big part of his survivability in either case, he's a 15-14/17 for Chromac 1, and he's a 14-18 in the case of Chromac 2. And that 14 is kind of a big difference, right? The armor is really good, but it's only going to keep him so alive. And if you can keep him from being knocked down, now he's going to be that defense 14 all the time, making things need 6s, 7s, 8s, etc. to hit him. And that's before we take terrain into consideration. So that's pretty strong. But also the Ravager models, you can probably position so that all of them are actually within 6 inches of this guy. So now you have a pretty good situation to prevent knockdown on them. I think it's very strong. I have not needed to really use Sigil of Power, but if you had a ranged heavy list that you were planning, I would first consider going into Protectorate with the Choir, turning off non-magical ranged attacks, or anything with a significant amount of incorporeal, which we're not seeing a whole lot of right now, but should it get a resurgence, this guy's going to potentially help you out there. So remember the utility from him. I would probably try to get this in any list that had a full loadout of Ravagers. Just like I said, for the no knockdown tough can be pretty frustrating for your opponent, pretty strong when it's working. Defensively, again, the stats are not my favorite, but I think they're enough, especially if you can keep this model safe. And like I said, he may have a place in just about any list because of Sigil of Power, really. Chain Lightning is very strong. A lot of times people aren't planning for the additional leaps backward, and Magic 6 isn't the best, but you can usually find a target that is plausible to hit. So I like this model quite a bit, actually. I would play it with the unit. I would consider it sometimes out of the unit. It probably isn't going to be able to babysit things like Wolf Riders to keep them from being knocked down just because of the speed disparity, but there's a potential there. It can certainly support things like the female Tharn. It's a little slower, but it's not enough that you couldn't use its positioning to your advantage. So I like this model a lot. I haven't played it a ton. I would say its rules are pretty straightforward. You're going to use whichever magic. Your magic ability is the more important thing, but if you see a good turn to be able to get Battle Wizard off, that's great. And also keep in mind you can Battle Wizard while you're in melee, so it's not like ranged attacks where you go in and it'll be turned off. And again, the only place that changes here is I would say his value goes up quite a bit with either Chromac. And worth a note, we talked about the Storm Raptor quite a bit last episode, of course, and I would say the Storm Raptor is going to synergize pretty well with his Chain Lightning, and there are times where the Sigil Power could certainly be important. So just worth a note on that. I would consider him in any list that you have a significant number of Tharn. I would consider him with the unit. I would consider him in a situation where you have the Bloodpack, which I think we'll have enough time to kind of cruise through here in a minute. And overall, I would say it's a great model. When I get one painted, I hope to show that model off as well. I know I'm going kind of fast here, but I think we're just going to power through and try to do one more entry and kind of knock all this out at once. So the Tharn models also have a ranged branch, I guess, if you will. Their bows kind of look like giant branches. But there is the Tharn Bloodpack. So this is the sort of mixed arms, mostly focused on ranged unit. So let's just go over their stats real quick. They are Speed 6, Mat 7, Rat 6, Defense 13, Armor 14, Command 7. So that is mostly the same except for the armor. They have Assault, they have Pathfinder and Tough, just like the other ones. They have 5 wounds. They are 12-18 for the unit, 4/6 model unit again, FA2. They have a Tharn Bow, which is range 10, rate of fire 1, power 13, and they have Bow Blade, which is a half-inch, power 11. And they have Heart Eater and Tree Walker like their melee brethren. So the Bloodpack. They used to have a rule called Assault and Battery, which allowed them to shoot and then charge, which I liked a lot better, but it was exploited in Morvana 2, and it is my suspicion that they wanted to shut that down. Theoretically, they have a longer threat range now, because before they could walk 6, shoot 12, so for a total of 18. Now they can charge 9, shoot 10 for a total of 19. Or, sorry, assault. You won't necessarily want to assault every time, but they can. Additionally, they used to be able to use the corpse tokens they could pick up, which they could only pick up in melee, but they could use them to make boost attacks and damage with their bows. That is no longer the case. The wording of Heart Eater specifies melee specifically now. So you can't get those boosted POW 13s to hit or to damage anymore. Rat 6 is respectable. Being able to ignore forest for line of sight is respectable, but they don't ignore concealment from that forest, so that's worth note. And they are Rat 6, but they're only Rat 6, which is not the best. 5 wounds. They do have tough, and their point cost is 18. So this is probably the unit that I've heard the most negativity toward, and I'm wondering if there aren't a few places that this unit still fits. But most of our damage buffs are really, we have Curse of Shadows, and then we have and I haven't mentioned Hand of Fate, but that applies to all of this. But then we have the other rules we have, like Scything Touch and Stone Skin and so forth, are not going to help a unit that wants to shoot into melee, right? Like, you can, as long as you can, Curse of Shadows will help. I guess Scything Touch will help if you're actually getting into melee with the thing you're assaulting, but I would suggest if that's your goal here, there's probably better units. Wolf Riders really come to mind there. Power 13 is an extraordinarily high damage for non-Warjack, right? We don't really see Power 13s, so that is significant. And again, I said this with the Ravagers, but maybe I'm selling the Power 13 a little bit short. However, we have the ability to get Weapon Master throws from Blood Trackers at 3 inches less of range, no assault, although they're 1 faster speed, so it's only 2 inches. And those are Weapon Master throws, so as long as you can select prey, they're going to be better. The Reeves have the ability to CRA and sort of adjust their power, and I don't know that they can get 6 Power 13s effectively. 4 of them get a 12. 5 would be a 13. You're not going to get 6 13s out of them, but you're going to come close, and you have the flexibility to go up to a 19 and have the Werewolves. So not a great comparison for the Bloodpack there. We have the Wold Stalkers, which have been little seen as well, and with concentrated power, they have the same range on their guns. They start at 12 instead of 13, and they can go up to as high as 16 on the very last attack, sort of putting them in a higher damage at range role as well. Again, kind of a strike here against the Bloodpack. So, and they're less points. They're 10 points for 5. These are 18 points for 6. I feel like you probably need to get a little bit of work done in melee with them. But if that's what I need to do, like I said, Wolf Riders, Ravagers, Wolves, and some other stuff are just kind of better for that. What I want to see from them is those bows be as powerful as advertised, and I haven't gotten the feeling that they are from my play. I do think, again, someone like Wormwood is a great place to look at them. Una 2 might be, with Hand of Fate, both helping their accuracy and their damage to a degree. But they're not quite in the area where you're going to be able to damage heavies, and if I can't damage heavies, I don't know what role it is that they're intended to fill. Are they intended to kill infantry? They're going to do okay at that at best with their stats. Are they intended to kill light jacks? Okay, they can probably kill light warjacks, but that's going to be a little bit inconsistent to rely on your opponent bringing that. And so, what exactly is their purpose? And I so far haven't been able to figure out what it is they're intended to do. I feel like maybe 1 more POW on the bow is enough. Realistically, what I want is their ability to boost those bow shots. So maybe an attachment's coming. I still suspect that the Tharn will be the first to get a theme book for us here in probably about a year, I would guess, within a year. So that would help us quite a bit if they get maybe an attachment that gives them a turn of boosted damage on their bows, or longer range would be great. I really liked their range 12 before because it let me kind of get backline stuff, though now we do have the Reeves that do that. Or just like a snipe turn, so power, range 14 would be pretty strong for a turn. Boosted damage on their bows, or a boosted attacker damage, or the ability to get corpses and use those for the ranged attacks, all would be strong. As they are, I just have a tough time finding a role for them. They don't really survive well enough. They don't really damage well enough. They're sort of just like 1 or 2 points, and their point cost isn't low enough either. So they're just sort of in that realm where they're not quite cheap enough or efficient enough to do the things that I've been looking for in lists. Now, they may have a list. I haven't heard of anybody having success yet. That doesn't mean there isn't. Like I said, Mosar, Wormwood, for Curse of Shadows is where I would start looking. But you never know. I really love the models too. And I've been looking for a place for them to be painted or played so that I could justify sort of spending, the Griffin's Roost painting, justifying them painting them. But right now there's just so many other things that are going to do a better job, in my opinion. I can get those type of ranged attacks. For one more point, I can get Celestial Fulcrum, which is more survivable than 6 of these, and it has 3 ranged attacks that are all just better and boostable. So yeah, I guess I lose 3 attacks, but not really quality ones, and I think that's a tough position for this unit to be in. They really need a little something. I don't know what that little something is. Again, I might be selling short the amount of damage they could do, but when I see the fact that I have access to like concentrated power and some other stuff, I feel like I'm probably okay with them where they are. I would really love to see this unit see some love. I hope that maybe there's some releases coming out that do so. Until then, I don't know that I will probably, if I can, I will try to find a time to test them. At the moment, I don't see it being a priority, but I wish that it was. So I try to stay positive, but not. The reality is not everything is going to be at the top. I do wish these guys were a little better, but as it is right now, it's just a tough to find a role for them given their points and their power and their other strengths. So I do think they seem primed for a solo or an attachment or a few other things really to benefit them. Assault from a theme force could really benefit them. That's something people have been hoping for as well. So we'll see. I'm hopeful for them. Not every piece that comes out is immediately going to have impact. Sometimes you need the right caster to come out, and I think that was Movana 2 for a little while in Mark 2. Sometimes you need the right caster to come out. We still sort of need one here for this. Sometimes you need the right model or unit to synergize with them, or command attachment or weapon attachment. Could be getting that as well. And we know theme forces are coming, so that could be it. And maybe at some point, really what I think would be great is if they had access to the ability to boost their damage rolls. I don't think it would break the game. I think it would give Circle a totally different way to play. And I'd like that's always been what I wish they could do. So there was a theme force in Mark II that did that, and it was very strong. I played against there was a person in the Wisconsin, I believe the Milwaukee meta, who played that list quite a bit and to great success. And I'm hoping that perhaps there is we can see something like that again soon. So that's kind of my Tharn-isode, Ravagers, male Tharn-isode. I don't know what to call it. Probably not the most shining cheer that I've had when I've reviewed stuff, but I want to say my goal is to remain positive, but also to remain realistic. So right now, The male Tharn I do feel like need a little nudge. They could use a little push, either a caster release, a theme force release, other buffing models or units, weapon attachment, command attachments, and I think those things happen, and we've got a pretty interesting. Like they're there, right? Like a little nudge in any direction, and these units are fantastic. Maybe something really interesting. We heard him talk about the Man of War battle engine for Khador. Maybe there's something similar for Circle. Some sort of ritual totem or something we'd hoped when the Gallows Growths came out was that they provided corpses, and sort of giving boosts. Being able to boost more attacks makes a big difference. If the power 13 is solid, as I mentioned, for the male Tharn, but let's say they can reliably get 3 corpses. Now you're going to get now you're in a scenario where, let's just say you even reliably getting 2 means you can get 2 boosted power 13s per model. Now we're talking, right? Now we have a very significant melee output, and couple that with like 1 debuff, and we can get a lot of work done. They don't have that right now. They don't reliably have a way to get that many corpse tokens. So even 2 is let's see, 2 is not bad either, because you can get the charge, which gives you a boosted power 13, buy and get another boosted power 13. As long as you can hit with them at 7 or 8, you're solid. So that'd be very strong for them. I would look forward to something like that even. It doesn't take much. It's not going to take much, and I hope people don't dismiss the first time they see something that synergizes and be like, oh, well, Tharn are bad, so whatever comes out for them is bad. That's not the case. I think they're there. I think I may even be... It's possible that if I do get a chance to give them 5 or 6 games, that I may see something there that works much better than I thought. So far, they haven't grabbed my imagination, so I haven't, but it could happen. So, anyways, that's the Tharn-isode. I will really quickly would love to give a shout out to my sponsors. So, Muse on Minis for letting me post my videos to their website to get a little bit more traction. Now I'm trying to remember if I remember to do the last one. This one will be on Muse's website later. I'll also have it on my YouTube channel, of course, youtube.com/cheddarcaveman. Additionally, I would love to thank Griffin's Roost Painting, as I do every episode. All of the very beautifully painted models that I have that you've seen pictures of, and there's some that I have that you haven't seen pictures of because I don't have pictures, have been provided by Griffin's Roost Painting. And if you also want really nicely painted high-end tabletop or better models, I would definitely say check out facebook.com/Griffin's Roost Painting, or just search for Griffin's Roost Painting on Facebook, or griffinsroostpainting.com, and she can give you a quote on whatever it is you might want painted, and you can go from there. I don't know next week what we'll be talking about. I do have coming up, I'm hoping to get some practice in. I have a tournament this weekend. I have later in the month I have a I just forgot the name of the format. No. ADR. Wow, just blanked. I have another tournament later in the month. And then the big one for me will be ATC in the beginning of March and Adepticon toward the end of March. So that's sort of where we're headed. I may start talking a little bit more about kind of what I'm thinking there. I may keep some things to myself for a bit, although I don't know that me keeping secrets is really going to give me that much of a competitive edge that I'm not worried about it. But anyways, as always, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message, and we'll see you next time.